Good morning. How are you all? Good morning. Okay. Welcome. We hear a lot from you around the employers and what are they looking for and what are the types of things that, questions that they're asked, what really would set you apart as a candidate. My name is Annie Walker. I'm the workshop specialist at Rochester Works. So today we've got three employers with us. We've got Karen, I think. Okay, I wanted to see if I have my other one coming in. Karen is here. Taz?
Taz. It's new. It's new for me. It's new for Annie.
She just got married. Okay, so she's here from CORE. We have, am I right, it's Anita Hill? April Hill. I can't read, guys. Okay, so April is here. She is actually Human Resource Director for Monroe Community College, near and dear to my heart because I'm an alumni. And then I just grabbed my friend Rob. And so Rob is from Klein Steel, and he's the HR director, am I correct, Rob, for Klein Steel. So they're going to sit and chat with us a little bit today. I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask them questions. I'm going to start off with a couple questions, but by all means, the more questions you have, just raise your hand. I'll come to you. This is your opportunity to really have a one-on-one conversation with some of the top employers in the area to get their feedback on really what's really happening out there and how you can best position yourself as you meet with them, okay? So, again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And you can take your time and answer this one at a time, whoever you want to do this. We're going to keep it pretty casual. But what are the top qualities you look for in prospective candidates?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So what my company does versus being a human resource director is we're a recruitment company. So we recruit volumes of people for volumes of jobs. Last year, I think we wrote just under 5,000 W-2s at the end of the year. So we do a massive amount of recruitment. So when we're looking versus maybe an HR director, the first thing that we see is a resume. So we're looking for grammatical errors. We're looking for do things line up? Are there major red flags? Are there huge gaps of employment? Are there typos? That kind of a thing. That's our first impression of someone, typically, right, is their resume. And I think that if you can't, as a candidate, take the time to just make sure that your resume is as perfect as it could be, and again, I'm going to give you my honest opinion, then why should we take the time to consider it? And I hope that's not offensive. But I can't tell you how many resumes we see where objective is spelled wrong in the objective statement, or things aren't consistent. Like maybe your dates of employment say September 13 to present. The next might say 9/12 through September 14. It just doesn't aesthetically look like you've taken a lot of time to go through it. So that for us is the very first thing that we look at. We're trained to go through critically and look at resumes like that. So that's something that CORE personally would look at.
Great, thank you. April, what are your thoughts?
Well, absolutely. I agree with my colleague here in that we also look for those things that are just going to be glaring on a resume. We want to make sure that your resume is free from any errors, any spelling or grammatical errors in particular. I know that it is widely acceptable with the use of social media and texting to use abbreviations, but it is not acceptable to use that same type of language or grammar in resumes or any communications that you might have with an employer, particularly email communications. It is very disconcerting when I receive an email where everything is lowercase. There's no punctuation or little punctuation for that matter, or that everything is capitalized, and it's like, why are you yelling at me? Oh my gosh. So, we have here at MCC a variety of positions, from student employment opportunities to faculty and administrative opportunities. So we recruit a wide variety of candidates. So I understand that with the student applicants, their experience may not be as great as, say, someone who's been a faculty member or who has taught and has, 20 plus years of experience. but we also look for experience. You may not have a lot of direct hands-on work experience, but we look at if you're a student, if you're new to the industry, we look at what other opportunities you've had within that industry. We look at internships, any volunteer experience that may relate to the position at hand. We really want to know what you can bring to the college, how you can enhance our diversity here at MCC. And I'm not talking about diversity as it means race or gender, which most people think that that's all diversity is. I look for experience. I look for how can you enhance and make MCC a better place for all that we serve, the community, the students, and each other. Very long-winded answer, so I'm sorry.
That was great. Karen and April both touched on a key component. The resume is your first opportunity to get in front of an employer. So having a correct resume, grammatically correct, well-positioned, well-typed out is their first impression. Once you pass that test, though, it's now a chance to shine in front of the employer, right? It's your chance to do the face-to-face or a phone conversation. What we look for at client still is what are your communication skills? Are you understanding what our needs are, and can you position yourself to meet those needs? What transferable skills do you have that can make us propel that position forward or the company forward? We hire based on our values. We have 10 core values that makes the foundation of Klein Steel. Things like accountability, candor, customer satisfaction, dignity and respect. We ask questions based on those, and that's the majority of our interview process is about those values. If you don't live those values or can't demonstrate those values, you're probably not the right fit for us, and we're probably not the right fit for you. So it's a two-way street. You have to have both the fit for the employer, but it's also we get a great position for you as well. So we go through a very extensive interview process. For a manufacturing company, we do multiple interviews, we do assessments, we do background checks, we do reference checks. I mean, we go through a pretty exhaustive process to hire the right fit for Klein Steel. Some employers out there that may not go to that length for an entry-level position. We feel it's a very valuable because we want you, once you're there, we want you to stay there. So once again, it's got to be that two-way street. It's got to be a marriage of both parties, right? It's got to be a fit for you and a fit for us. So those are things that we look for.
And so, going on that thread, when they get beyond the resume, when it's somebody that does intrigue you enough to have you come in and have that, I always say, your first conversation is written and your other conversation is verbal. So
Absolutely.
when they get in to really speak to you, what are the things that you look for in an interview that is going to make a candidate stand out to you over, the other people that you're interviewing?
Sure. So just to really break that down, and some of this you might say, well, of course, but I can tell you this happens every day. Are you on time? Are you prepared? Do you have hard copies of your resume? Were you nice to the receptionist? Do you know what company you're at? I've had people come in and they say, I think I have an interview here. To someone who's like, well, I'm going to put my name behind you and tell my clients, you have to hire this person. That doesn't make me feel very confident. So little things like that, and I'm sure that probably sounds like common sense to most of you, and that's good. But on that, can you speak to the job that you're interviewing for? Specifically, if it's something like Klein Steel or an adjunct teaching role, can you say, I'm good for this manufacturing job because? Have you done research on the company? Can you say, oh, I've seen that, Core has just won a contract with so-and-so. That tells me as an employer, okay, you've done your research. You're serious about this. You're committed to being here. Other than that, I think being able to answer questions intelligently is important. Communication, whether it's, nonverbal, are you sitting like this the whole time? Are your legs open? Are you, twirling your hair? Are you checking your messages on your cell phone? I mean, really, that happens all the time. I'm so glad that you laugh because that happens all the time. But really, I mean, that sort of stuff. Are you an engaged person? Accountable? Do you want to be here? That kind of a thing. And then also knowing your resume, being able to talk through your resume and say, these are the things that I've done at this job that aren't on this piece of paper. It's very telling when a candidate, just reiterates what's written down. I can read, I can see what's on here, but tell me what you did every day, because I'm sure these 4 bullet points don't summarize 10 years of employment, right? So things like that. We look for more of a conversation. Our stance is help us help you. It's a two-way street. Scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. So we want to make sure that you can come in and say, this is who I am and this is why you should work with me. So maybe working on your own personal sales pitch a little bit can always help. But that's something that, I think pops out at me when I hear that type of a question. I don't think there's anything wrong with pausing to think about a question before you answer it. Someone once told me that, there's a lot to be heard from what's not being said than what is being said. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just taking a moment to compose yourself. I mean, I've been on the side of the table not too long ago, and it can be very nerve-wracking. So just making sure that you're prepared to have that conversation.
April, your thoughts?
Oh, certainly. Well, I just have to pose a question because just as Karen said, interviews can be nerve-wracking. Is anyone here, do they feel that, they've got the interview down pat, that they're always prepared, they're going to just ace an interview every single time? Okay, awesome. I need to speak to you then. I need to get your tips. But for the most part, interviews are very nerve-wracking. I don't care how long that you've perhaps been employed, been working, or have experience interviewing, if your job is to be an interviewer, if you're a recruiter, and then suddenly you have to go interview for a job. Trust me, it can be nerve-wracking. And the one thing that I have found that helps with this is practice. The old adage of practice makes perfect. There's some validity to that, So conduct mock interviews. Talk with family, friends, career services directors, your HR people, and just say, hey, can you spend about 30 minutes with me and help me, guide me, counsel me on my interviewing skills? I need to brush up. I don't care if it's, you're new to the game, you're just graduating from college, or you've been employed 20 plus years and you suddenly find yourself in a position where you have to look for another job. I think it's always best to practice. Definitely come prepared. I am a person who never is without a notepad and notes. So I've always gone into interviews with some questions already prepared. I try to anticipate what the employers are going to ask. They always ask the obligatory, tell me about yourself, or what would you like to share? Tell me about this position, that position, and basically, why should we hire you? Why are you a good fit for this position? So I try to think of my responses in advance. I want to make sure I jot down a few key points that I want to bring out in the interview, and it is perfectly acceptable to have that with you, and tell the employer, I hope you don't mind, but I brought, a few notes with me, and because I want to make sure that I don't forget. So be prepared. With the internet, there is no reason why, you shouldn't do your research and be prepared about the position, about the company. You should have that information. You should walk in knowing what the job is, what the company does. You should already know perhaps what their benefits are. All of that information you can find on a company's website or by doing research via social media. So have your ideas, your points already prepared, and just practice.
Well said. So April mentioned interviews can be very nerve-wracking, right? And there are all types of interviews out there. There's your standard questions you get. There's behavior-based interviewing. Like I said, our process is a multi-step interview process. My role as HR is I really look for the passion and the commitment to the company, whereas I'm not looking for technical skills. That's what the hiring manager is looking for. So that's why we do the multi-phase interview. So when I interview folks, I ask them, well, why Klein Steel? Why do you want to join our organization? What do you see the benefit of you coming to us for? What's the benefit for you? Where do you see your long-term goals, and how does that fit? How does Klein Steel fit into that pathway? Do you understand anything about the company? Like you said, do your research. Don't come in here, well, what do you guys do at Klein Steel? Well, you should know what we do. You should know when we were incorporated, some of our background. Make sure you really have done your research and do that practice. As I mentioned earlier, we recruit on the core values. So know them. They're on our website. Our mission's on our website. Everything about the company's on our website. We're a very open company. So make sure you've done that research. Make sure you know what you're talking about. Make sure you have a understanding of how this does fit into your career path. Like I said, it's that two-way street I mentioned earlier. But also look at, where do you want to go down the road? Is this, okay, I'm just coming here to get some experience, and that's fine. If you want to come to Klein for a few years and get some experience and go on to something better, that's fine. We do want to know that up front, though, and we're okay with that. Our big focus at Klein is continuous improvement and development of our folks. So someone who wants to come on board and wants to stay as a software for the rest of their life, that's fine with us. If someone wants to grow into a supervisor, let us know. We'll work with you on that, too. As a company of 200 employees, there's not limitless opportunity for growth. We try to expand roles. We try to understand where they want to go and try to give them cross-training opportunities or different forms of development. But, make sure you are prepared. Make sure you practice. Make sure you know about the company. And make sure you know about yourself. Don't come in there and just talk about, well, here's my experience. Well, we use a lot of behavior-based interviewing, like I said. So tell me about a time when, and go through that situation. Tell me about a time when you had a difficult conversation with a colleague. How did you handle that? Tell me about a time when you had a disagreement with your boss. How did you handle that? Very situational. That gives us more insight as to who you are versus just saying, well, I sold $2.5 million last year to X company. Well, that's great. It's a technical skill. But who are you as a person?
Great.
Absolutely.
Sounds like a little bit of what we're teaching. Sounds like scar stories, all of you people, okay? As you're all here today, I know that you'll be meeting a lot of these people because they're going to be at your booths. So when you consider that environment, when you consider the career fair, the career conference type of environment, how can someone come in and impress you? What are you looking for? Because that's a little bit different than some of the other ones. So what would you be looking for today?
So, I'll kick it off.
Yes.
We'll just go through this.
Yeah. We've got a pattern going.
Career fairs are tough. It's great for us because we get to have a connection immediately. We don't have to call and say, we found your resume, here's who I am, here's why I'm calling, is this a good time to chat? So in that aspect, it's great. We look forward to this particular fair all year long. It's also hard because you can't really hear anything, and you've got a line of 12 people, and you're carrying a bunch of stuff. So that can be really difficult. I think the more concise, the better. I'm Karen Haskell, Tejas. I'm looking for this type of work. I'm looking for this range of money. Is there a better time that we can sit and have a more intimate conversation? There's nothing wrong with that. I was just upstairs before we came down here, and someone came up and they said, I've been applying to every job on your company website, and I have not received a call back. Immediately, I shut down. I mean, we're 6 people at our company. We do what we can. So it's not a chance to really talk to that stuff. It's a chance to take your 5 minutes that you have and to grab the attention of who you're speaking with and say, here's why we need to follow up next week, tomorrow, in 2 weeks, that kind of a thing. Firstly, if you know that, and I'll just keep using Klein Steel, is hiring, I saw that you're hiring for this position. I'm very interested. What can we do to, what can I do to have a further conversation with you? It's a blessing and it's tough, these kinds of things. So I think if you can really just capitalize on the time that you have, that might be a really strong point for you. And I'm trying to think about, what we really, really look for. Obviously, the things of, have you come with a resume? Do you have copies of your resume? Do you know what you're looking for? Again, a recruitment company is a little bit different than a hiring manager or HR director at a specific company. So for us, we're a little bit more open, but we want to know the facts. What do you want? What are you looking for? How can I help you get there? And it's quick. I mean, we don't have to talk about the weather and our children and that kind of a thing. I don't mean to sound insensitive, but really it's a long day for everybody. So the faster you can get to the point and move on to the next steps, the interview, the follow-up, whatever, the better for everybody.
Absolutely. Having been in HR as well as a recruiter for a recruiting company, I've attended my share of career fairs. And it is a very long day. It can be very grueling for not only the participants, but also the employers. And it is, I think, an opportunity for the participants to make that first impression, as Karen said. Are you making eye contact with that employer? How is your handshake? Is it firm? Or are you crushing my hand? Or do you have one of those little weak, little handshakes? And I'm like, oh, I want to know that you're here, you're present with me, and that for the few minutes that we have together, that you are into what I'm saying and I'm into what you're saying, that you're interested, that you aren't fidgeting. I know that a lot of times at these career fairs, there might be handouts, little kitschy stuff that the employers might give. You might have, your resume, and on a day like today, you've probably got your coat, and you've got a lot of stuff in your hand. Try to make sure that all of that is I guess, together or gathered in such a manner that it does not interfere with you, with your ability to make a handshake, to have eye contact. The last thing you want to happen, and it's not totally devastating, but as you go to reach in to shake someone's hand, all of a sudden everything drops, and then you're focused on, oh my God, I've just embarrassed myself. I got to pick up all my things. You want to make sure that everything is in such a manner that you can avoid the little faux pas. I want to know, or I want to be able to see that you've done some research on the company, on what we have available. Don't come up to the employer table and say, so what you got? What y'all hiring for? No. Again, with technology the way it is today, you should have prepared, knowing what employers are going to be here, what employers are looking for, what types of positions they may have open. So do not spend your time going from table to table to table. Be strategic. Look for employers who have opportunities to offer that are in line with your goals and your objectives. That's what we want to see. We want to see folks who are focused, who are serious, who are well-researched and articulate. You've only got a few minutes. Speak as if you are well-prepared, and again, having that eye contact, having that good handshake, making that good first impression. I want to be able to remember, when I come back, all I have is a stack of resumes. And I can't remember everybody. But I want to be able to pick up your resume and say, aha, that was the person that had the great handshake, or that was the person that was really clear on what their objective was, or really knew about our company. I want to be able to walk away and remember you for the impression that you made.
Great. So typically the job fairs that I go to, I see three approaches. The first approach, as April mentioned, is what do you guys do? What are you hiring for? Or I need a job. Okay. Well, they're probably not going to get very far with our company because they've not done any research whatsoever. They're very honest, which is great, but come up to us with a little enthusiasm, and that same person will go from table to table to table, and you see them walk the entire room, table to table. Not the best approach. Second approach I see is the folks who've done their research. Oh, client's still great, you're here. Yeah, I saw on your website you're looking for a senior accountant. Well, I so happen to have, and they give their 20-second elevator speech, which is perfect. Firm handshake, eye contact, resume, composed, that's fantastic. They have their objective, they're going in for the kill, as we say, and we know that person at that point. Third one is, they come and said, client Steele, here's my background, do you have anything that fits? So they may not necessarily know what we have, or sometimes employers don't post every opportunity they have. So it's also a good approach to introduce yourself and ask what they're hiring for. I had one person this morning come up to me and said, here's my background, here's what I'm looking for. And so we're not hiring for that. However, have you tried this other company because I knew they were hiring somebody. So job fairs are a great point for employers, too, to network. We're talking a lot and saying, okay, well, I'm looking for this, you're looking for that. And we cross-refer within a job fair itself. So even though you should target the company you're approaching, but sometimes you might find another opportunity by going up to that company and saying, here's what I have to offer. And they may point you in a different direction, even though they might not have that for you.
Great, thank you. I just want to take a minute. you know, I mean, I do have a list of questions, but, you know, this is really your workshop and your opportunity to sit and talk to this great panel. Do any of you have any questions? If you do, just raise your hand. I'm going to come to you with a mic. Okay, so I'll be right with you. But thank you.
I may not need the mic. I got a deep voice, but so my name is Joe Kwiatkowski, and you know, if I decide to apply for a job at Core, MCC, or Client Steel, and I look up at your company on LinkedIn, and then I see a position I want to apply for, and your faces all pop up as the HR director. How do you feel about me going in and trying to connect with you so I can have a direct link in, or even if I get your email address, because sometimes it's on there, and I send the position posting on my resume to you directly? How do you feel about that?
I am not opposed to that. We do have procedures that we follow here at MCC. So we have postings, and I will direct you to our job page, our employment page on the website, where you can go ahead and apply online. I will tell you all of that. You know, this is MCC's procedure. You've got to apply online. Here's the link. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. I think that is a great way to make yourself known, because it does show that you've done research and that you've prepared. I can't, you know, say that your resume is necessarily going to go straight to the top, because here at MCC we hire by committee. And so we have a group of people that are responsible for that hiring process that receive all applications. But I can make sure that you've completed the application process fully, and that your information is released to the committee for consideration.
Yeah, I second that. I think LinkedIn's a great tool that came out several years ago. You know, social media, everybody has their cell phones, their smartphones, their iPhones. It's right at the palm of your hand nowadays. So LinkedIn is a great resource. It's a great way to introduce yourself to the company. And I don't do all the hiring. I'm a part of the process. I do have a recruiter that does most of the initial screening. So many times, even if it comes to me, I will let my recruiter know that, hey, here's someone who had connected with me on social media. Why don't you take a look at their resume and see if it's a need that we have. So even though it may not be the right person, at least it's a person that in that pathway. So it's I welcome those. What conversely, what I don't like happening is when that person then messages me 4 times after that in 2 weeks. You know, you made the connection, we accepted, we kind of told you the process. It's okay to do a follow-up, but make sure you're timing those follow-ups appropriately. You know, if you haven't heard in a couple weeks, check back in. If we made a connection and we've had a conversation and haven't heard it once again in a couple weeks, check back in. But to check in every week, hey, what's the status? You know, I haven't heard from things. It gets to be a little bothersome, especially after a job fair. You know, we get several hundred resumes that flood into the HR office after that. So you got to give us time to read through those, look through the qualifications, and get back to folks. And note too that every employer can't get back to every candidate that applies. You know, you'll know where you're in the process if you're a prospect of ours. We'll keep you in the loop. We'll talk to you. If you haven't heard from us, you also got to take that as a sign that, okay, well, maybe it's not the right fit at this point in time. But still, once again, appropriate follow-up is okay. A couple weeks in, or, you know, once a month, that's fine too.
Yeah, I would agree with Rob and April. I personally love it. I mean, I'm as good as many good people that I'm connected with. So I think that's helpful from a stance where it's a direct link. I don't have to sort of dig through a resume or dig through a database. I mean, like what Rob does, if we get a resume and it's a perfect person for something that we're hiring, we'll either pass it around to the entire office, or we might call directly. You know, we got to figure for every job we probably get 100 to 200 resumes. So if someone can sort of take the prospecting out for us, that's super helpful. But I would say the one pitfall with that is for Core, what we'll do is we'll say, okay, well, who is this person connected to? And I might say, well, Annie, hey, this guy Joe connected with me. What can you tell me about him? So that might not be a pitfall. That could be a great positive. So I would just be aware of that. But I personally love it because then we post our jobs on LinkedIn and that kind of a thing. And then with what respect to what Rob had said, follow-up can be detrimental if you're not doing it appropriately. I'm sure we've all had those people who are like, I know that phone number. And I think that's just a professional courtesy to know how to sort of manage that. But personally love LinkedIn.
And I think that aligns well because I do get phone calls, I do get emails, I do get LinkedIn saying, do you know this person? So I think it's important. And this is kind of like a second follow-up question to you guys, and then I want to get to the other questions. But, you know, what are you looking for? How much impact does does their social media presence have on, basically a hiring decision for you? What does it tell you about a potential candidate?
I'll take this one.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of sales recruitment, a lot of marketing, a lot of communications. If I'm looking for a senior or even mid-level salesperson and I'm connected with them on LinkedIn and they have one connection, 2 connections, that to me is a red flag because those jobs are all about networking. So industry specific, that does throw up a red flag. If we're to a point where we're about to hire someone, yes, we go through the references that our candidate has provided, but we'll do a Google search. So just be aware of what's out there. That might not be the most fair thing in the world to say, but it's the age that we live in, right?
Absolutely.
So just, is your Facebook private or is it not? And you've got really inappropriate stuff on there. That kind of stuff is important. And then with LinkedIn, I see this a lot. Make sure that your resume that you're providing matches with your LinkedIn profile because we'll look at them and we'll say, okay, well, Joe said he was here for 12 years, but here it says 5. What's this about? And we'll always call someone out on it and say, well, I saw this. A lot of times when we're interviewing someone, we'll have their paper resume, we'll have their perhaps LinkedIn profile, the profile that you've created on the core website, and we'll cross-reference between the 4. So yeah, social media plays a huge part in recruitment now in 2015.
I agree. Although I don't do it much here in my position at MCC, but I have done some researching via social media in previous positions. And I do look for those inconsistencies. I do look for things that are inappropriate on your pages. This is something that I counsel my young niece and nephews on all the time. Of course, they are tired of their Aunt April preaching to them, but actually they've kind of blocked me from their Facebook pages. But I'm always on them. I'm like, please know that anything you put out there in cyberspace can be found.
Forever, too.
Yes, and it's out there forever, as Karen says. I don't care if your settings are private. Trust me, there's always someone out there that can find information out about you. People are very tech savvy. Young children are very tech savvy. So just be careful. And this is something that I constantly say to my niece and nephews is, if you don't want your mama to know about it, don't put it out there. If you think that your mother is going to be embarrassed by anything that you post, I suggest that you don't post it. And the same goes for potential employers. They're going to look at your behaviors. I know it's your private time and this is what you do in your personal lives, but they want to know what potential employers want to know what potential liability they may be facing in an employee if they hire you. So just be careful, just be aware that the information can sometimes be detrimental to your career and your employment prospects.
Absolutely. The resumes over the years have changed, right? We used to have just our name, address, and phone number on them. Then we put our cell phone numbers on them. And then we put our email addresses on them. And now we put our LinkedIn profiles on them, right? Or you should. It's a good practice. And like Karen said, we will match up the LinkedIn profile to the resume. Is it the same font or the same information, I should say? Are the dates match up? Do they have the same experience level? Do they have the same accomplishments? The other big thing for us is, what are the recommendations? And also, what are their connections? If you have recommendations on there, either just they check the box and say, yeah, I recommend this person, or truly a written recommendation, that goes a very long way with us, because someone took the time to say, yes, I know this person, and here's why I recommend them, and here's what they can bring to your company. And connections are critical because it's a small community, right? It's a big city, but a small community. For instance, I had an applicant 2 weeks ago apply to us, and I'm scanning through their work history. I'm like, oh, they work for this company, and guess who the manager was? Well, my brother was their manager.
Oh, my.
So guess what I did? I made a phone call. And my brother said, yeah, I would not hire that person. Here's the reason why, and give me their history. So we're all connected one way or another. Okay, maybe not directly, but indirectly, we all have contacts, and we'll utilize those contacts to make some phone calls. Because once again, we want to make sure that we're making that right hire, liability reasons. If you do have a Facebook profile out there and you're trying to hire for a driver position, and on your Facebook you're saying how drunk you got over this weekend and you got in a car wreck and you did this type of stuff, probably not a liability that we would want to take on as a manufacturing and trucking service. So it is your private time. We respect that, but once again, be careful. What do you want to portray out in the community? What do you want to portray out there in cyberspace? So, like you both said, it's all out there.
Yeah, and I think on that point, what's your email address? What is your handle, right? That is very, very telling. I just came to Annie's class last week, and we were talking about what people's email addresses and numbers are. We are people. We're not computers. We, I'm sure, have life experiences. I mean, you really have to consider that stuff. And if you're in a place where you're applying for a job and you don't want to get rid of your personal, get a new one. They give email addresses away for free. Yeah. Create a professional one. Change your voicemail. If you have a phone number where you're saying, okay, employer, call me at this number, and you have a ringback tone that's, maybe not everybody's choice of music.
Right.
Take it off until you get the job. You really have to think about when you're looking for a job, it's all consuming, and it's every aspect of connections and how people get a hold of you.
Absolutely.
So excited to hear this. It backs up what I say. Yeah. And just a little bit of an aside, the young lady standing over there, that's Ruth Ann Campbell. And so as you think about your presence, Ruth Ann takes care of our social presence. She is our PR person. So just as you have to attend for people to know and understand what you do, what you have to offer them, we as a business, a viable business, need to do that by having Ruth Ann project our image appropriately to a community, so they know exactly what we can do, what our values are, and what and what our what our relationship has been and what our successes have been. And so I think of LinkedIn as one of the ways to be an entrepreneurial spirit and help people identify what it is that you do, so employers can get to know you. Okay, so you have been very patient. So let me hear your question. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Hope. I know you made a comment about body language earlier during the interview, but I was wondering how that and clothing choices affect your first impressions on interviewers or interviewees.
Sure.
Can I tell a funny story on this
Absolutely.
one?
Go for it.
So manufacturing, not everybody comes dressed up in a suit and tie, which we don't expect that. We're a manufacturing company. One of our hiring managers was interviewing a gentleman one time, and he walked in and shorts that were hanging down a little lower than they should be, what they typically refer to as a wife beater tank top, and a crooked hat. Oh. Well, manager didn't have it quite the way I would have, but he basically looked at him and said, "You came here looking like that for an interview? You get out." Very blunt to the point. Okay. Now, like I said, I probably wouldn't have handled it that way, and I coached him on that. But that's your first impression to our company. Yes. Don't come that way. And you guys all, you're obviously here for a reason. You've been through this coaching. You're not going to come that way for an interview. But know your environment. Even though we're manufacturing, we don't expect you to come in like in a suit, but come in a pair of khakis, come in a polo, come in a blazer. Okay, if you're going for a more professional position, wear a suit. Kind of mirror. Do a drive-by at the parking lot before you go interview and kind of see what the employees are wearing. We're business casual on Friday, and we'll tell interview candidates, if you're coming in on Friday, we're business casual. We don't mind if you come in jeans and a more casual attire. That's okay. But know that company and know what they're looking for. It's always better to dress more conservatively. You can never go wrong with wearing a suit or business attire, but you don't have to at all times. So once again, get a feel for that. And I'm okay if someone even asks me, I know it's a manufacturing environment, what do you expect me to wear that at the interview? I'm okay with that. I'll be honest with them. Once again, it's a two-way conversation, and that's why we look at the interview process.
Sure. And I think just dovetailing on what Rob said, for females, how low is your shirt? How short is your skirt? That kind of a thing goes a long way. So back to your question, Hope, I think someone's first impression based on attire is paramount. When we interview, the way our office is set up, it's a closed room. So things like perfume.
Yes.
Are you wearing a mountain of perfume?
Or cologne.
Or cologne. Or a smoker. If you're a smoker, did you just smoke in your car with closed windows? That can be really distracting to someone who might have allergies. Someone like me, I know one of my weaknesses, I cannot sit still. You're probably watching at me like that girl has too much caffeine. But truly, I have to really check myself and say, okay, I need to make sure that I'm not all over the place and moving my hands. Last week, I had someone come in for an interview, and it's literally my computer and his resume and an application sheet. And the whole time was like this for him. And I can't remember half of the things that he talked about, sorry, because I was so distracted. So, you know, if you know that that's a point of weakness for you, just be aware of it. But yeah, clothing, you know, nonverbal cues are a huge part of our screening process.
And just to take that just one step further, also jewelry. Be mindful of the jewelry that you're wearing. You know, I know it's particularly for women, it's fashionable to have these big statement necklaces or rings. And, you know, while they do make statements, you know, you have to think about what statement that is making during that first interview. And same thing goes for guys, you know. Are you wearing a watch that's, you know, it's got a big, you know, face to it? Are you wearing a bracelet? Are you wearing, you know, a ring? You know, that might be distracting. So just think about everything from, you know, ladies, your heel heights. You know, are you wearing the killer stiletto heels that to, you know, the jewelry, to the cologne and perfume, to whether or not you've smoked. And again, it can be very distracting for that person that you're interviewing with. And as Karen said, you're typically in a small room, and people are going to pick up very quickly on those things that may cause them to not focus on what you're saying and what you have to offer and what you bring to the organization, but focus on everything as to why they don't want to proceed with that interview.
And one last tip, it might be a minor one, it might be a funny one, check your teeth before going in. If you just had a poppy seed muffin before going to an interview, nothing's more distracting to the interviewer than glaring at that one that's stuck right in the second tooth. So it's funny, but it has happened. I've had actually 2 over the last 6 years of clients that came in with something, whether it was lettuce or a poppy seed stuck there, and it was, all I could do not say, you know, I'm going to go use the men's or ladies' room, so check that.
So to that point, if it's a luncheon interview, you don't want to order salad, okay?
Right.
But I was serious on that. You want to pay attention with some of them. Does anybody else have questions? Okay. Here you go. Thank you.
A difficult question that I received one time was, it was based on morals and values. The employer asked me, in your opinion, do you believe that it is okay to betray your morals and values if it gets you further ahead in the company, or if it can move the company forward? And I feel that if I say yes, then I'll be like, well, how do I know you're not going to betray me? If I say no, then I'll say, well, how do I know you're committed to the company? But for me, you know, I try to be honest and forthright, and I do stick to my morals and values, so I would say yes. But I don't know if that might be a boon or if it might be more harmful than helpful.
Yeah, that's a really tough question.
That's a very tough question.
That's a great question, and it's actually a tough question, and that's one that I would never have asked in that manner. But I think you answered your own question. You said you stuck to your values and you gave an honest answer.
Absolutely.
And that's what I think the employer is really looking at. You know, are you trying to work the interview? Are you trying to come up with the right answer? Or are you trying to be true to yourself? I would always err on the side of someone being true to themselves. And actually, do you even want to work for that company? If they're asking you to compromise your own morals and values to further the company, is that someplace that you want to be? I would never want to do something that's unethical or immoral just to gain a position or to move the company ahead. And I don't think most companies want to either. So I'm not saying they're trying to trick you, but I think you answered appropriately by being honest and saying you would stick with your morals and values.
Remember, the interview is an opportunity for the employer to not only learn about you, but for you to learn about the employer as well. So as Rob said, you know, if they're asking you that to do something or that may potentially go against your ethics, then, you know, that will be perhaps a red flag for you to say, you know what, this is probably not the best place for me.
We're good on that one? Okay, so this is probably going to be a hot one. how does salary factor into the hiring process, and at what point does it become a disqualifier? So, for example, are candidates automatically disqualified if they put a high or low salary, on an application before they can actually have a conversation with you?
So this is obviously a tough question. Everybody has financial obligations. You have to feed yourself and possibly others. So I think if you are aware of the job that you're applying for, are you aware of where you can be flexible fiscally for your personal life? Have you done some research on the industry? In Rochester, New York, what does this job pay for this type of experience? I don't think that you should have to compromise yourself so much that you can't pay for gas to get to work. But I think sometimes it is about getting your foot in the door. So I think it's really dependent on the position. Some jobs are just to have a job, right? And some things are really career paths. So do you know that, okay, well, maybe if I know that if I take this job for a year, in one more year, once I've, had that experience, I'm in a place to negotiate pay and get back to that. Where it is very distracting is if someone is very firm from a recruiting standpoint and saying, look, I will never go below $50,000. And I might have a company that is posting, oh, it's 40, but if you get in there and you have a conversation, you say, here is why you need me, here's what I can bring to the table, then let's negotiate on the back end. So I think on the front end, it can really discount people if they aren't willing to at least have a conversation and be flexible. However, on the flip side of that coin, I don't want to waste anybody's time, not a candidate and not my client. So if someone says, this is what this job pays, period, I have to respect that. So, yeah, I mean, that can be tough, but salary.com, go on there, take a look, what does this job pay? I think the RBJ lists what certain companies pay, what certain people make in companies. I mean, you can do your research like what we've talked about if you just do a quick Google search. I just think you need to be very aware of, for your personal experience and this industry, what's the pay for that role. So I think if you're educated on it, you can sort of drive the conversation and perhaps salary negotiations a little bit. But I think you have to be mindful.
At MCC, we don't begin that conversation about salary until we're prepared to start to interview. And so before we confirm interviews, we will share with candidates more information about the position, and we will share what the minimum entry level is for that position, because we have ranges. And that will be the opportunity for candidates to let us know, well, my expectation is X. And then we can say, well, that's perfectly within range of this position based on your skills and your experiences. Or that we can say, this is going to be beyond the range of the position, and then let the candidate make the decision as to whether or not they want to move forward. So we do have that conversation, but it is not done at the initial job posting stage. It is done at the stage in which we are going to start to interview, because, again, we do not want to waste anyone's time. We recognize that your time is just as valuable as ours. And so we want to be forthright and tell you this is what the minimum salary range is for this position, or the starting salary for this position may be, and then we can have a conversation.
Yeah, salary is always a tough one, and it really comes down to expectations. And those expectations are on both parties, right? The employer has a certain range that they're looking for, and you have a certain range that you're looking for. And we view it as, where is this person at in their life at that point in time? If they've spent 20 years at one company and progressed through the ranks, their salary is probably going to be a little bit higher than what we're looking for. So we always ask the question, what is your desired range? And we have a very honest conversation, because many times, because you've progressed, you're not going to get that same salary coming into maybe a little bit junior level position. But is it for just getting into that company and moving up the ladder that way? Is it because you desperately need a job right now, you've been out of the market for quite a while? So really, what's the emphasis of why you're looking for that salary? So knowing the company and knowing what their range is and doing your research, and salary.com is one resource. I wouldn't use that as a sole basis, because that sometimes can get skewed, but use the RBJ, use the Department of Labor, use Rochester Works. There's all kinds of resources out there that can kind of give you a range of salaries. And knowing what you're willing to take at the lowest, and also what the complete benefit package is. Healthcare is a critical aspect of compensation these days, right? Healthcare and retirement. So maybe the company has a 100% match 401k up to 8%. Well, that's not your salary, but that's part of the picture. Or maybe they pay 80% of the healthcare cost. Well, healthcare is not cheap these days. So don't just go and looking at what your salary is, but look at the full picture. When I interview candidates, I give them our complete summary of benefits. This way they can make an informed decision. If this is a place they want to be, they have complete disclosure of what that package will look like. So even though we may not meet their exact salary, which we generally do most times, they also have some other information to go by. So, okay, you're $3,000 shy on the salary I'm looking for, but gee, you have a 401k match and you're paying for 70% of my health care. That makes up that 3% pretty quickly. Okay, so once again, do your research, know what the market's paying, know what you're willing to take for what that position is, and maybe know that you're not maybe in the same position as you were at the other company with 20 years experience.
Okay, there you go.
Hi, I'm Jean Ryder. Actually, that's very interesting, but is the question, I don't know if this is where Annie was directing it, you know the little square that's on the application, does that automatically bounce you out if you've been at a company 20 years or whatever? Does that totally disqualify you from even having the entry level in? If you said you had 50,000, but you're looking at a job that's maybe 30,000, because it's that segue, as you're saying.
Great question. Yeah, that little box in our application says desired salary.
Yes.
It doesn't say required, it says desired, and that's a big difference.
Well, sometimes it says what was your previous
Yeah.
salary. And then, I think that's kind of where it is. Does that put you here? Does that put you here? Or does that make it through the system?
Yeah, it's not an automatic disqualifier for us, to
Likewise.
answer it shortly. It's a consideration, and once again, we look at, okay, what's their history been? If they have had a good lot of experience, of course, we know that they've progressed, so they're going to have a higher level salary. But maybe they're at a different point in life right now. Maybe they're, looking for just a second income, or they've been a different breadwinner in the house, or their life has changed, and they're not looking to be at that level anymore. We've actually had people interview and said, yeah, I'm looking to take a step back in my career because I don't want to have that same level of responsibility anymore. So there's all kinds of different reasons why someone may have a different level of salary than what we're offering. So it's not an automatic disqualifier for us.
I think that's the part that's most disheartening.
Yeah.
Right.
The other way you can get around that too, you can always put negotiable, and I think a lot of people think, well, that's going to just exclude me right away. And no, it's negotiable. Everything in life is a negotiation, right? So if you have an application, and we're still old school and have the hard copy paper, you're going to list your salary. So we're going to know. As long as you put negotiable, okay, well, that's great. Or you put the salary you're looking for plus negotiable or negotiable. That's fine too.
Any other questions as I'm going through? Do you have anything? You have one more? Sure. That's what we're here for.
What do you think is the difference between being confident and being overbearing or overzealous?
Cocky versus confidence. You stumped us.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. Like I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of sales recruiting, so I always look for people who are confident in what they do. And I think that can come by hard numbers. I killed my quota by 120% last year. Okay, how'd you do it? That's a great conversation. But I think, that I'm just trying to answer this the most PC way. Confident is good. Cocky is not good, right? So if you come and you say, well, I'm the best, and I know that, I'm the most unattainable candidate in all of Rochester, I mean, that's very off-putting to someone. It's kind of like dating, right? I mean, for CORE, we're trying to match people with a company. So you don't want to sort of be so overbearing from the get-go. And I think if you're really good at what you've been doing, you can sort of let your resume speak for itself and your experience. I find people when they sort of badmouth their old team or their old companies, I see that as sort of an arrogant, point of view to take. It's hard because you want to put yourself in the best light, but you don't want to come off as that kind of a, chip on your shoulder kind of guy. And again, I think practice. If you can interview with people of, different backgrounds, an HR person, a Rochester Works person, your brother, they might be able to give you a more unbiased opinion and say, you really need to tone it down. So maybe, interviewing with someone who can give you that advice first. I don't know if maybe you have a better answer to that
No,
question.
I completely agree. I think that there is perhaps a fine line between confidence and arrogance. And I think what would make the difference in an interview is your ability to articulate your skills and experiences in such a manner that certainly promotes your abilities and shows the value that you could potentially bring to that employer. As Karen said, it's very disheartening to hear candidates speak disparagingly about their past employment histories or their past supervisors or coworkers, and to say, something to the effect of, well, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. I think, in most respects, we all think that we're wonderful, but how do we go about telling our stories? How do we go about promoting our value to an organization? Or, as Karen indicated, it's like matchmaking. It's like dating. How do we put our best foot forward to make this person want to see us again? Have that second date or that second interview.
Taking out that too, a lot of it is really on your mannerisms, right? If you come in the interview and you're sitting up and you're engaged versus sitting back and got that, right? People will do that.
True.
Checking the watch constantly during the interview, like this is not really worth your time. That's a big put off. Really the tone. A lot of times you want it to be a conversation, like I said earlier. However, you don't want to get too comfortable. And when I have someone in front of me and they're starting to say some inappropriate jokes, throwing some inappropriate humor in there, some inappropriate language, okay, you're too comfortable now. This is my first conversation with you, and it should be a conversation, but it's not that kind of conversation. That becomes that bridge to being a little more arrogant, a little more cocky, like, I've got this, I can do whatever I want in this interview process. So maintain professionalism throughout the entire interview process. Be friendly, be personable, be confident, but don't cross that line.
That's a good point.
Are there any other questions before we kind of close out? We're good? Oh, one more? Okay.
I don't need the microphone.
Yeah, you do, because we're videoing. Is that for you?
I did not know that. I just want to ask real quick we touched on this a little bit earlier about follow-up, both from today and when we apply online. Oftentimes when we apply online, the computer tells us back what's happening. We don't really know what exactly is happening. What are your thoughts on rules for appropriate follow-up and what the best thing to do is?
Great question. You want me to start?
Sure.
Sure. Okay, great. So we, once again, clients still were very old school. Like I said, we don't have really a computer applicant tracking system. It's really on paper, and we do have a submit your interest online, or you can submit your resume online. So it does not give an automatic response at all times. So if you don't get an automatic response, probably the best thing to do is about a week later is just email the contact and just say, just want to make sure you received my resume, because sometimes they do get lost out there, right? So it's a very good opening. Is I just want to make sure I did apply online for this position. Just want to make sure you received it, and if you have any feedback or anything else I can provide you, please let me know. That's your first step, in my opinion. If you still don't hear anything, or if you had talked to them, or you got the automatic response, probably give it about 2 weeks, but no more than a month. I mean, if you're waiting a month, the chances are the position's already filled or they're already in the interview process. So I'd say between 2 weeks and a month is good follow-up. Don't do it that same day or within a week. I'd say give it 2 weeks.
Yeah, and especially after places like this, I mean, I can tell you with confidence that we will be going through resumes for the rest of the week. So I think, you apply, you get that automatic response, maybe a week later, check in, have you received my resume? And I would completely dovetail with what Rob said. Now, if you've had the interview and you've sat down, you've met someone, I think thank you email is perfect, because then that gives employer or hiring manager direct access to reply right to you, save you as their contact. They don't have to dig around for your contact information. And then maybe every 10 days if you haven't heard anything before then.
But one thing, just real quick, with the thank you, don't do it as soon as you go into your car in the parking lot. If the interview just ended and I get a pop-up thank you 2 minutes later, there's a little hint of desperation there, okay? Take some time, get back home, get back to your office, get back where you're going. That same day, by end of the day, or the next day is appropriate. Have it immediately as soon as you walk out the door, and all of a sudden your smartphone, you can email me. Not quite the thing you're looking to do.
Yeah. Now, at MCC, we're a little different in that, as I said before, we hire by committee. So there are several people that are involved in that process. So it is going to take a little time for schedules to come together, for review of applications to happen, and for actual interviews to take place, because we're dealing with, in some cases, 5 to 10 people's schedules. So we do have an applicant tracking system that will keep you notified throughout the process. Once you've applied, you'll receive an email saying thank you for your application, and the committee will be back in touch with you. Then once the committee has reviewed applications and chosen the candidates that they're going to move forward with in the interview process, you will then receive another email saying, this is where we are. Thank you for your interest, but the committee has decided to consider other candidates, or you are one of the candidates that the committee is planning to interview. And then after that interview has taken place, and we've decided on who the person of choice or the person who's going to be hired is, you'll also receive another email. So it can be a long process, but we do keep you informed along the way. And if you're a little anxious, you can always come back and send a message or call HR, and we'll let you know where things are in the process.
I want to thank all of you very much. I think you showed a diversity of perspective. We had a diversity in different types of industries. We've got some recruitment in here. You asked really good questions. I appreciate that. And I think that's what this day is about. It's about having you come together, what we really believe are some of the best companies in the area, and having you come together what we believe are some of the best candidates in the area. And getting their perspective and answering your questions, I think will help you as you go forth today. So I appreciate you starting your day with us, and thank you so much for taking the time. You'll see those friendly faces up there. Step in and say hello to them. And again, thank you so much for sharing your perspective.
Thank you.
having us.
Thank you.